All right, here we are. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Short Fiction Side Hustle. And today we have a not so short fiction side hustle going on. Uh,
Yes.
Novel.
and
Oh
yeah,
boy.
I'm here with my friends Varsha and Chris, as usual. And yes, today we read the so called novella called The Augur's Gambit by Stephen Donaldson, the second novella in the King's Justice collection. Uh, you
I don't
see,
have a book. I'm just mimicking
You just
the sound.
I appreciate that, Varsha.
you see the originally this book was printed in the collection with this cover here back in 2015, so not too long ago. And then it was Chris, you got the UK version there
Yeah, well,
of
UK's
the
printing.
collection of the new of the both stories,
Yep.
and then Golance, our friends who do the sci-fi
Of
masterworks,
sorts.
printed these separate hardcovers of both the King's Justice and the August Gambit. So they're available as separate novels. These are novels. uh, so, um, and in this edition, like it's 180 pages. That's like as long as a lot of the sci-fi
My
masterworks we've read.
Masterworks, yeah.
Yeah. So I consider this a novel, if nothing else. But in the interest of completion, we doing it on this short fiction side hustle
Mm.
series. Uh, so the Augur's Gambit, Vasha, some high level thoughts coming from you.
Hmm. It was long. So, I guess I'll start by saying this wasn't my favorite Donaldson story, but I didn't dislike it, but it there were parts of it that went on for too long. Now, if you asked me, hey, what would you cut from it so that it fell shorter? I don't know what I would say. I think it's long, but it reads like a short story, if that makes sense. Like the events and how many, like the number of days it focuses on and what happens. Um, so so I think for that reason there were parts that like sort of what's what I'm looking for, flagged for me. But then it really picked up towards the end and caught up, and yeah, there were many things that I really enjoyed, like his relationship with Excrucia and how that built up. And there was a little bit of uncertainty about, it was fairly clear that he was in love with her, but some parts of it was like, is that really what he wants, or is he looking for something else? So there was a little bit of mystery there. And wait, is there some background noise?
Yes, I'm getting
Is
a
that
lot of
me?
Is it me?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so whether he loves it or not, so that was cool. The names were all interesting, and I think the queen's character was interesting, but overall, for how long it was, I feel like the other Donaldson stories that were longer I enjoyed a lot more. But yeah, I'm glad I read it, and it was interesting and fun. And it did one of those things. It did that thing where I always think about the story when I'm not reading it. So this one
Mm.
occupied my background space, like making me want to go back to it, like even after I finished it. So yeah, the characters and everything were I won't say memorable, but like yeah, they I enjoyed reading about them enough that I like was thinking about them outside of reading the book. But the process of reading itself I didn't enjoy so much, if that makes sense.
Always a good sign though when it sticks with you.
Hmm.
Yeah, Chris, what do you got for
Me. I would say I didn't enjoy it. I'll go in the didn't enjoy it camp. And I think there's a couple of reasons. I was thinking about why, because I think like classic Donaldson, I think a lot of the the ideas and premise, etc. I loved. I loved the basis on which he was building the story. A lot of the interesting, intriguey parts. I really enjoyed those parts. The whole premise and world that this is set in is very reminiscent of GGK for me. Actually, it's very like a GGK novel in a lot of ways, very like Song of Our Bone. This kind of, the infighting politics for control of the land to Ghana was very the same that we'd read as well. And I think the difference with that one, they're both books, full books, and this one's a novella, short book, if you want, in some ways. And I feel like he was caught between a rock and a hard place when he came to do that, because he had to set up a lot of characters here. The number of barons and the 5 suitors that there were, I don't think I could distinguish one from the other at any stage within the story. Like, who was the bad guy? I kept on trying to send myself, oh, he's the suspected bad guy, and then somebody else's name would come on going, is that the guy I was thinking of? Is that the guy that I thought was the bad guy, or is he a good guy? Because they're all sort of called Baron something in the end. And I think I could have done without that whole pretext. Once you got past the idea that, I like the scene at the start where it becomes clear that she's proposed to this many barons, etc. But then we go 2 into politics and then 2 into the house. And I don't really feel like any of that really was necessary in the story. Like, we even get the revelation of the 2 brothers at the end that nobody realized and all that kind of stuff. And it none of that really happened. Now, once it got to the last 50 pages, that stuff was really interesting when the attack happens on the palace. Like, there's no doubt that is really repulsive at that stage. And at that point, it didn't really matter who was the bad guy, who was the guy that was sort of just existing in the moment. And the last thing that I'll say that I didn't really love about it is I sort of felt by the end of the book, I'm not really sure what the point was. The Queen has changed the style of ruler that she is, but also softened on her stance towards her daughter and that kind of stuff. But it didn't really, it felt like that was just happened as a principle of her being saved then when she thought she was dead and she's lost her hand. It didn't really, for me, it didn't feel earned. So, like, loads of great ideas, like the Kism part. I really love those scenes. Any of the ones that had really intrigue or danger, but the general character building, I don't think either had the space to grow within it or to differentiate within it, because as Kay would have done, say, in a larger novel, he took the time to give each of those characters kind of their moments. And that's really what it is that none of those characters had their moment to differentiate themselves for me. So I felt like there was an awful lot of bump from wasted space in it. I could have cut 100 pages of the stuff that I found not really worth paying off. And I would include the romance in that. I mean, you could sort of sense it the way through, and it felt at the end that it was tacked on as a thing rather than necessarily an intrinsic part of the story that was important in any way. But, I mean, people's mileage may vary with the romance part of it, certainly. But yeah, there's my thoughts.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, because when I first read this, I was starving for more Donaldson, so I kind of devoured it when it first came out. So I remember liking it, and then reading this a second time now, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit, because I was getting little details along the way, because I pay attention more, thanks to you guys. I pay attention more to everything I'm reading, and because Varsha makes me talk about stuff, so I have to look at stuff, and as I was going through this, I started seeing themes, and I started seeing things that were more prominent this time around, rather than just looking for a neat new fantasy thing that Donaldson created, because he creates some really neat fantasy situations and really interesting types of magic and stuff like that. He's done that like all throughout Reeve the Just and Daughter of Regals, and I understand some of the points you made, mainly because I think it's because Donaldson set such a high bar that yeah, and when
Absolutely.
when it doesn't quite reach that high bar, then you start to ask questions. You start to look into, you start to wonder why, and you're not enjoying yourself as much as you did the last 20 stories or whatever. But
100% correct. Yeah.
but but as I was going through this, and I tabbed certain parts of it. I went back this morning and I looked at all the tab parts, and I noticed that there was a pattern to where I was tabbing, and I started reading it again, not again, but like looking at the areas, and I was like, this whole book um, is seen to me, and I may be way out in left field, but it seemed to me to be an allegory for cancer, and I'll show you what I mean as we go through the story and as we go through the book. But it starts, right off with, of course, our what are they called again?
Harromancy.
Hieromancy, yeah. Anyways, it's prophecy. It's the ability to try to read the future, and it starts off right away with him. Right in the first two paragraphs, we get a deep picture of the situation, like right off the bat, and we get this guy. What's his name? I forget his name.
Mayhew or
Mayhew.
Yeah.
Um, he reads entrails of animals, whatever, in order to tell the future. It's kind of like reading tea leaves almost, but in a more disgusting way. and the and I noticed that he's going to on the inside of these animals, and these basically these twisted passages to see the future, and these twisted organs that have all these passageways in them, and then he's going through these secret twisted passageways of the castle in order to peer into business that's also not his, because who owns the future, right? So and that was like that was just like laid out right at the beginning, and I was like, oh, there's a correlation there. And I think some of the names of the characters, of course, they're very deliberate. All the names of the characters, and especially like Glare, Estobadi, Glare, right? The Baron, uh, and he was uncertain of his penetration, so he had that penetrating glare, and the other characters were named appropriately as well, and every single one of these characters, these barons, had some sort of name or characteristic that was either insidious, penetrating, uh, and so on, and that had these negative connotations to them that led to this body that was the castle, the keep, the capital there that she was at, and this body that was the island, and I just kept thinking about that and thinking about that, and I'm going on, and I know, um, and as it went on, I'm like, the queen is trying to find the the tumor, basically, the downfall of her island, and she's trying to treat the tumor, and she's using a form of treatment that might be hurtful to her own kingdom. And then the when finally the Eastern Empire comes, and part of that treatment, of course, was exploring for other means of treatment. She's sending out ships, she's sending out boats, she's sending, and the exploring isn't working until finally it does, when the the uh, the greater type of treatment, which is harmful in and of itself, actually forms a means of fighting against the cancer of the island. And it took me a while to put that together with all my notes, but that's just a theory I had that I just threw out there, and I know Donaldson has spoken about in his personal life different aspects of cancer in his family and stuff like that. So I just kind of put all that together and just I don't know. What do you think of that theory?
Sorry, I was waiting for Chris to speak and you were waiting for
It's the
me.
same.
We ended up in a deadlock, but you go first, Chris.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's really interesting because I mean that is part of my disconnect with it is that her actions, like I sort of said, don't really. I couldn't make sense of them for me, if that makes sense. It felt like she was. I had sort of thought and tried to link it to the fact that she had to kill her lover, in some ways, and maybe this sort of internal trauma that she had in the love for her daughter. But the fact that you've been able to pull something else, kind of more of an allegory to something else, is making me think quite a bit about the actions of everything that happened along in there, and also generally about the fact of what is the power that people were seeking, if you know what I mean. Why do people want to marry her other than a position of power and that kind of stuff? So that disconnect for me in terms of like where the world sits, it's not obviously a place full of jewels and gold and all of that kind of stuff. Aside from her being a woman of power, what is her power? There is a certain magic element within the world, for sure. But if I'm following what you're saying, there the magic is sort of science in its own way, because there is that, the iron and the blood and all of those things that are sort of discovered through it, which does link quite heavily with medicine, not necessarily with the magical world that we have. So that's really interesting. Tell me something for me to stew over in terms of like if and when I do reread this story, actually looking at it through a lens like that of her trying to heal from within, and doing it in like a more roundabout way. Whereas at the end of the story now, following what you're saying, she attacks it dead on. It's very much about being proactive in helping and supporting the people around you, rather than kind of, oh, let's send ships out and see if there's anything out there kind of thing.
I certainly think it's an interesting theory. The story, I guess, the base premise to explain the queen's behavior is supposedly that she thinks that if they have too much prosperity, that they'll run out of resources, and at that point they suffer a different kind of want. So I wondered if that fits in with the cancer theory as well. Perhaps from the point of view of like, if you do nothing, we will rot, and but like now we have to do something that could harm us but will eventually help us grow. So yeah, I guess that does fit in as well. So regardless of whether Donaldson intended it that way, I think it's certainly an interesting way to read this story.
Yeah, that's pretty. That's just. And I just really like that the how when he was Mayhew when he was failing with his auguries, and he couldn't bring himself to go that extra step, to sacrifice an innocent child, and he felt disoriented, and he felt unable, no longer able to determine his own location within the castle. That I think that kind of reflected the feelings that somebody has when they're faced with that kind of dilemma. And I just I don't know, that's just how I read it this time. And I think that says something for a story, that you're able to interpret different things out of it on a second reading.
On that point about the child sacrifice, again, another thing I couldn't really mix or parse really well is that she didn't really have a plan for why the child sacrifice would do, other than sort of call back to kind of medieval times when they did the sacrifice of innocent blood, in the same way. But they never really set the tone that that's what this world was, if that made sense. So, and she kept on harping back at it with Mayhew, and he's going like, that's a line that I can't do. That's a line that I cannot cross for you, even though. Oh, well, I suppose in some sense it is linked to the killing and the vivisection of the animals in some ways.
Yeah, yeah. I think the idea was that he would get more power out of it. He would get more ability to more. What was the thing the other guy said? The alchemist skill, and he listed off like 3 things or whatever in order to enhance. I
might have just talked myself right through that myself and come out to why that thing. But I was thinking there was some sort of other sort of linked mythology to it, which we never were really explained. But if it's just like, again, like the vivisection of the animals and kind of turn apart its entrails and doing the same with the child, maybe that is something. But
yeah,
if that's the case, then it does prompt. I came back to your point, Jared, about the fact that she's just searching for answers, if you know what I mean. She's searching in the dark. She doesn't really have a plan for why that would work. She's just looking for something to aid her.
Yeah. I mean, because the prognosis was doom and gloom. I mean, that was Mayhew's prognosis. No matter he did foresee doom if she did one thing and doom if she did the other, and it like either one didn't quite work out. And so I think the queen was looking for any means to enhance his reading, enhance his be a better radiologist or whatever.
Wait, I had a question and I forgot what it was. I think overall I was a little confused about what it was the queen was trying to do. To what Chris was saying about the child sacrifice. It's like, given that she already had this plan about like to bring about war. What was it that she wanted from Mayhew? Was it a way to avert war and try to find an external means to protect to save the island, like with the fleet from the ocean, wherever they came from? Or did she want to see the outcome of the war and make decisions based on that? I guess that was something that I had trouble wrapping my head around.
Yeah, I mean, I think she wanted a clearer vision of the outcomes. Mayhew didn't. He saw some things bad, but he didn't have specifics. He didn't have outcomes. He just had this could be bad or that could be bad. That was the idea I got. I don't know.
Yeah, makes sense. I really like the bit with the alchemist and the gift is the gift, and then being able to like what happened in the end with the use of the chrism.
Yeah, with the chrism, that was pretty awesome.
The original chrism scene was excellent, with the kind of dipping your finger in and see what happens. It's almost like the scene in The Thing when they're testing the blood. You're just sort of waiting to see what will happen. With it, and in this case, because it's you're reading it rather than a visual thing. It's about the taste and about to have the same initial taste, and then whether it tastes sweet or whether it tastes sour at the end. I thought was really nicely handled. In fact, I was thinking this is very classic Donaldson, this kind of framing and setup of this scene, and very inventive and very fun to read. And I really loved that. And then this fact that he was given over, oh, here's a lifetime supply, and you're like, this lifetime supply isn't making the end of the book,
right?
This lifetime supplies only got about 80 pages left of its existence still to go, and you're wondering how is it going to come about and be used, which I really enjoyed that part. There's no doubt.
That's funny. I like the I also like this aspect of uh, why history was important is important because it seemed that these people didn't really have a good grip on their history, and the uh, the and then somebody asked him because he's supposed to be able to tell the future, and so that's what his main concern is. And so he somebody said, "Why are you not content to imagine that we sprang full grown from the earth? Why you trouble with such matters as history and lineage, when the future is open to your arts?" And I thought that was a really good way to comment upon, yeah, history is pretty important, dummies.
So I was curious that it wasn't well known that the alchemists, well, not that they hold all the power, but more that they would refuse to use their power for anyone who's not quote unquote pure blooded with the gift.
Mm, yeah, yeah,
And you only need one queen who isn't uh who doesn't have like what the pure gift, and then everywhere on is not going to be right. So yeah, that was interesting that I forget the name of the queen, but that she chose to defy that. Like, why couldn't she have had another child with a different person who did have the gift and then
Well, I
secure
think
it?
that was part of the. That's where I thought the story was going. Again, she had these 5 suitors or these 5 barons that she was sort of testing out. It seemed like at one point to see what was going to happen, and I thought that's what the chrism was going to be used for. In the big party. I thought that was definitely the direction of the story at that stage, to try and find a suitable person. And it didn't go near there at all. But again, it was almost like the child. It's not almost. The child was a dirty little secret in some ways. It was known that it was her daughter, but the one, as soon as the attempt was made in her life with this thing, it was like, oh, people know that she's not pure blooded, and therefore she's at risk. At that stage, and like I say, I thought the story was going to go down that angle about her being sacrificed, and then kind of the lineage being talked about, which is sort of what made the end of the book somewhat strange, because then it's, to me, it reads then like the classic fantasy trope trail of this is the last age, when we're moving into modern society where magic no longer exists. Like, that happens so often in fantasy novels, like that we're moving into science and
yeah, right, yeah.
genre kind of thing. And I thought that's where that goes, but it seemed to be a bit neither one thing nor the other one at the end, if that makes sense, because she just accepted her for who she was and said, like, who do you want to marry? I want to marry Mayhew or be with Mayhew. That's the only thing that matters. And it was like, oh, as long as he's happy with that, that's okay. And we all live happily after him after. And sure, you have matching hands now,
Yeah, it's interesting because
Matching hands.
matching.
Yeah, and she also changed the articles of coronation so that Excrucia would have support, apparently. Which, yeah, that, and all of that happened in one paragraph. So that was interesting. Maybe it wasn't something that was a problem, or maybe Excrucia got to prove herself now with her sacrifice, and so they'd swear allegiance to her.
Yeah.
But
it was an interesting point about moving into science, because they're moving into making more cannon and more fireworks and gunpowder and stuff like that.
Very Wars of Light and Shadow-esque.
Yeah. So that's interesting, but they're still going to have their alchemy, and they're still going to have their chrism or whatever.
Yeah, well, it was interesting actually that the guy who came to take over wanted the alchemists. That's what he wanted. They had the cannons and they had the firepower, but they wanted the alchemy, they wanted the magic, and they didn't have anything. I thought that's an interesting kind of juxtaposition for the story and where it ended up and where it was going, etc. So, like I say, I think the book is held back by not being big enough. for the story that it actually has and tell. But I could say the same thing about King's Gambit, because again, I said at that time, as much as I liked that a lot more, that could have been a full novel quite happily as well. There was enough world there to really dig in and be bigger. And in that one, I think both books would have been not necessarily. I think this one helped, but I think it would have been more enriched by having a longer novel. But maybe you just don't want to write novels all the time. No, they take more time. They take more editing. They take
Yeah, I mean, I think King's Justice. I wasn't here for the discussion, sorry about that. But it did feel like a full-fledged, like satisfying read.
Mm.
But this one, I feel like it touched on a lot of things, and it either spent too much time or too little time on. So like it's in this confused space between a short story and a novel, or like a novella and a novel. And so there were parts that I wished were elaborated on more, and parts that I wished we didn't spend so much time on. Like with all the barons, I think in the last 2 pages we got a summary of like what happened with each of the barons. I'm like, I wasn't paying attention to where they were, so I don't care where they ended up. So yeah, I think there were parts that, like some of the magic stuff I wish we'd spent more time on almost. So yeah, I guess most of all it's sort of being disserviced by its length, perhaps. The story, like, it has all the stuff that would make me love it, but somehow they didn't come together to work.
Varsha wanted more rabbit entrails and rat dissections.
Yes.
and true to what you say as well, Jared. I mean, part of my feelings about this is because just about every Stephen Donaldson story has been like hit upon hit, and still fresh and novel. And maybe my expectations of it being going, this is 180 pages worth. This is going to be on another level. And it didn't quite hit that for me on first read, what we'll say, because Donaldson's got a hell of a pedigree there to follow, so.
Yeah. And I understand about the, I definitely get the, like, why you didn't care about the different barons and who they were and stuff like that. And I think that they were there just to emphasize their names and just to emphasize their their aggressive nomenclature to enforce the theme. That was it. Which doesn't leave much room for characterization because I think Mayhew's characterization is perfect. I mean,
yes, it's great.
Of course, it's told from his voice. It's all in first person, and nobody delves into a first person's head better than Donaldson does, and really gives you everything that he's thinking and fleshes out all his thoughts extremely well. So maybe we take the first person into account, and maybe that level of lack of baron caring for the barons is because Mayhew didn't really give a crap about them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe if you take that into account, and maybe some of the other questions and information you might have, if it's all from Mayhew's point of view, maybe he just didn't care that much about that stuff.
He only had eyes for one thing. That's what it turned out.
That is true. It turned out he did have eyes for one. But that could be a fault of first person narration, or just could be that Donaldson didn't quite get there where we usually do get there with him. That's up to the reader to decide, I guess. But there was still tons of beautiful passages. Tons of just great sentences and ideas. I love the paragraph that he puts out after Mayhew wakes up from blacking out after he stabbed his hand and is bleeding all over the place, and I couldn't imagine the pain of a dagger growing bigger while it's in your hand. That was just like, oh. but but the paragraph after he woke up, where he says, "Death was not the oblivion I had anticipated," and then he goes on. He says, um, he describes what it was. It was actually describing the events around him, but and then he goes. Finally, he says, "The sensation that my body had been beaten with clubs. It was the conviction that miracles had been wrought." And I was just like, that's a definition of death I'd never heard before. And I was like, that's pretty damn cool.
Very nice. Yeah, I did like that. That whole. I died, and then it wasn't quite the oblivion. And then in the end, he says, "I think that this is better than death. It's fine. I'll live with this." So that
Yeah.
was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Who needs a hand? I'm good. All right. Well, that wraps up our short fiction journey for Donaldson.
Ooh, what are you reading next?
Or a lot of Donaldson stories. Yeah, folks. All in all, I hope you guys enjoyed them all.
Oh yeah,
I know I definitely enjoyed rereading them all. That was a fantastic journey, I think.
Mhm.
I was just exactly the words I was going to say. Thank you for taking us on it, Jared. That was I now have a collection of paperbacks with that journey on my shelf, and a lot of them you could dip back into at any moment. Whenever you need
Yeah.
something, inspiration for something cool, and
Yeah. So for our next short story, I'm going to do something that I haven't done since way back with Varsha in episode number 3. And that is read something I haven't read before.
oh my god,
Oh.
And we're going to read a short story recently put out by Janie Wirtz in Green Dark Magazine. So I will. I have a copy of it. I'll be sending you guys to you guys, and we can read that. It's going to be an interesting experiment because
Yes.
it's all new, and I have no idea what to expect at all. I've heard from PL Stewart, our friend, that it's very good. PL's a little biased, so I'll take that for what it is. But I trust PL. He's a good guy. So
that's one of those things. When you're a fan of something, I don't call that bias. I mean, I have a friend that talks about this in terms of like films he makes by certain makers. It's not. You're just part of a fan. Bias is when you're related to them. Bias is when.
yeah.
And as far as I know, PL and Johnny are just unrelated. So.
Yeah, friends, but yeah.
We're all fans
Yeah.
of Johnny here, so
all friends.
it'd be really interesting to read this.
Yeah, no. So that's
this one for sure.
that is my plan. I actually want to look up the name of it. I have it here somewhere. Let's see.
What was the magazine it was published in?
Grim
Dark
Dark Magazine, and it was issue 46, and the story is called. 1 second here. There we go. Let's see here. Front Man Fallen.
And this is an independent short story, or is it a
is
Wars of Light? and-
Independent short story, yes. Not
Okay.
related to Wars of Light and Shadow. So.
Okay, cool.
And it's in Grim Dark Magazine, so maybe we'll get a little Grim Dark action from Jenny. Who knows?
Yeah, that sounds good.
I don't know. Yeah, no idea what to expect. So that'll be interesting. That'll be our next one. So thank you everybody for watching. Who has watched so far? Please go to Reading by the Rainy Mountain and go to Chronicle of Chris and check out the videos there, which you may see me on a couple of them here and there.
Couple.
All right. And as I always say, be good to each other and bye now.